hold on, Sydney Sweeney and a film called The Housemaidens? Okay, I have to check this out, right? I first heard about this film from a film critic called Dan Merrill on YouTube.
This widely and getting this many people to see it is an incredible achievement.
Love your stuff, mate. Mwah, amazing. And I also heard it was doing really well in the US and the UK, so I thought, yeah, let's check it out. And I have to say, it has been a wonderful time watching it, and truly this film was so much fun. Too much fun. When I was checking out the trailer for The Housemaiden, I found out that all the trailers were quite misleading. For me, they presented something completely different to the film I got to see. And you know what? I really appreciated the choice they were making, because it allowed me to enter into the film with a certain expectations that were completely subverted. Definitely, I feel that this film is somewhat original, but has definitely a personal feel to it. For me, it explored themes of pretense and contrasting perfect exteriors with the turmoil happening underneath. And you can feel the energy from the director, Paul Feig. So let's talk about some of the actors in this film. First off, let's talk about Sydney Sweeney, who is in the amazing TV show Europia and a film called Anyone But You. Now, I really like the idea behind Sydney Sweeney's character, Millie. She's a housemaiden with a dark past that isn't truly revealed. For me, her performance isn't loud or overdramatic. It isn't even blow you away incredible, but it certainly isn't flat or average. It feels realistic for who Millie is meant to be. Sydney makes it believable that someone like Millie could find herself in such, oh my gosh, a insanely terrible situation and still be able to navigate through it. There were definitely moments I found myself cringing and then hearing those classic tropes of bad things always happen to beautiful blonde girls. And I love how Sydney was willing to embrace it, but to make sure she came across as someone who can handle her own scenario and this crazy moment that she's having to deal with. Next, let's talk about Amanda Seyfried. You may know her from Mean Girls, Mamma Mia, and The Amazing Les. Now, I have to talk about this character, Nina, played by Amanda. Her performance is so exceptional. There were moments when I absolutely was convinced that she was the problem, particularly due to what other characters were saying about her, especially when it came to some of the gossiping from her friends and the hints regarding her medication. Amanda's performance was so amazing when portraying Nina as the crazy one, that even when I would watch Sydney Sweeney's and Peter Sarsgaard's characters interact with the whole situation, it just made it so real. Definitely for me, there were significant portions of the film I thought, yep, she's the crazy one, and it's all her fault. And you know what? That is exactly the feeling the film was aiming to evoke. Let's also talk about Peter Sarsgaard. Now, you will know him from films like The Batman or Green Lantern. For me, it was so good. He portrays a tech-savvy husband and convincingly presents himself as the story's good person. He's loving, caring, he's the perfect family man. For me, what I admire is how the film uses his character to delve into the notion of perfect exterior. Just because you see someone who's perfect, wealthy, and presents themselves in a certain way, doesn't mean that you're seeing the full picture. Skarsgård is able to create this impression that he is the good guy. But as the story unfolds, the ease finally starts to settle in, and then the truth is revealed, and his performance through this allows you for me to feel believable, but also so unsettling. Now, let's talk about the writing and the story itself. The film leans into the crazy woman who is ruining a relationship. Definitely, we've all seen this kind of narrative in film before. Definitely, I felt that it might be following a typical narrative, and I definitely had those thoughts where I was saying, oh, for heaven's sake, come on, man, are we really going down this route? However, I really did appreciate that the film employed this whole tactic, setup in a sense, as a double bluff. You could definitely see it in the script, all the traditional clues, you know, the gossiping, the on-the-nose comments about that she's crazy. And then I loved how it slowly but gradually turned all those things on its head. By the time we reach the end, we can realize this isn't what it seems. I love the backstory that shed light on who these characters truly are and what has really taken place. Definitely the theme surrounding domestic violence and the notion that there is always two sides to every story, and even just in case, thinking of the official version of that story isn't always the truth. I just felt they handled it in such an engaging way, and it was so much fun to see that unveil through the film. Additionally, I found the house setting really cool. It became its own character in itself. For me, it's fun and tense, and sometimes even feels frustrating in a good way, because you find yourself shouting at the screen, wanting the characters to see what you see. I love how the film effectively questions when to choose to believe someone's experience, even when the evidence seems to point in the opposite direction, which really resonated with me on a personal level. So in terms of the rating, I really enjoyed this film, and I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. I loved how it tackled domestic violence, gaslighting, and the misleading husbands. For me, was a strong contender to almost put it up as an 8. Instead, I kept it as a 7 due to the balance of performances. Now listen, it's Amanda Seyfried's performance that truly convinced me that she's the crazy one. Without her, she's able to sell the whole plot of the film. For me, without Amanda's performance, I don't even think I would have been as engaged. This is what allows me to figure out or even have the notion who is the true antagonist. For me, this is why I decided to keep it as a 7 and not an 8. So that is going to be my review of The Housemaid. Wow, what a twisty, tense, psychological thriller. Again, really love the strong performances from Amanda Seyfried and Peter Sarsgaard and even Sydney Sweeney. And yeah, it gets 7 out of 10 for me. Now, if you've seen it, I would love to hear your thoughts. Definitely, you gotta let me know. Did the twist work for you? Which performances stood out to you? I want to say thank you so much for watching this review. Yeah, and please always remember, if you can dream, you can be. Peace.